Divine Rising New Earth. Welcome back to the show broadcasting the frequency of New Earth now. My name is Calista and I am here with my co-host.
Hi, I'm Anneka.
And today we are going to be learning a lot more about the lovely woman sitting beside me who just introduced herself, because I will be conducting an interview of her. For those of you who don't know, Anneka and I are roommates in addition to being podcast co-hosts, and we are besties, we're creative collaborators, and we're soul journeyers together on our spiritual incarnation on Earth in this lifetime. And at one point, Anneka was just a friend of a friend of a friend. That is Anneka's and my origin story. How we met was as friends of friends of friends in college. We met at a music festival called Lightning in a Bottle in California in 2017 or something like that. And when I met Anneka, her reputation preceded her as a spiritual scholar. I was towards the beginning of my spiritual journey at that time, and I was getting into learning about yogic philosophy and the law of attraction and chakras. And spirituality was a trend, but I didn't know that many people who, beyond like collecting crystals and tripping on psychedelics, were really that interested in it. And my friends who introduced me to Anneka had given me this impression that we were going to get along really well because she was a spiritual scholar like I was. So I want to know, before you and I met, how was it that you had begun your journey as a spiritual scholar? Because certain spiritual traditions are esoteric. So this information, if you know it, you sought it. And we connected in our very first meeting around being esoteric spiritual seekers. What was the beginning of that journey for you?
I feel like it was a culmination of all things that I'm assuming was predestined, meant to happen in some way, because it was like this period I feel like that was ripe for an awakening in my life where like all the forces were coming together to kind of expand my awareness and perception of reality. It was around 2012, 2013 when I think all of the stuff started to culminate, where I was really at a point in high school where like I started going on like my own solo journey. I kind of like disconnected from a lot of friend groups based upon different happenings and was just really into self-improvement and self-reflection and being on the internet and exploring what was out there and just like really vibing in my own energy field. And that was when I started to become really close with Winnie and Allison as well, after kind of that period of solo traversing, who are the two friends who connected us, whom we're still friends with to this day. And along this period, I became friends with two other girls who were like super free-spirited as well. And I think it was the time of like when electronic music was like really starting to become, I don't know, SoundCloud was popping off. There were so many
bangers.
Yeah, there were so many bangers that just made you realize like, wow, there is so much more to life. And like there's so many like great frequencies and energies and adventures to be had. And I just kind of felt like my world was opening up in this really visceral way. And then my friend Winnie and I had a hallucinogenic experience together. It was the first time I had ever done something like that. And instantly it was this opening of everything's alive, everything has energy, everything is like made up of this sacred geometric patterns that are swirling around, and like everything is like breathing even when we can't see that it isn't. And so instantly it went from it being like a linear reality to like this energetic, pulsing, ever-changing reality. And also this, I feel like, compassion opened up of me realizing that there's this same soul frequency within us all that is ultimately so innocent and so divine, and everything that seems as if it's not in alignment with that, is distortion that has been accruing over time. And so essentially it just like gave me this lens on life of never taking anything personally, understanding that that divine nature is within everyone and everything. It wasn't even that intellectual of like me coming to these conclusions, like adding things up on a board. It was kind of just like this veil that had been popped off. I didn't grow up in a very spiritual household in terms of like liking to study or teach me esoteric teachings or things like that. We weren't very religious, so that's what I mean. I didn't have a lot of exposure to that type of thing, so I didn't like correlate any of this to any esoteric or spiritual schools of thought, because I think when we were younger, it wasn't pop culture popular as it is today. I think that started happening towards the end of when I was in college. It like really started to pick up. You know, people didn't really know about crystals, chakras, this, that, whereas it's much more common. Most people know about that kind of stuff nowadays, even if they don't know the exact minute details of it. So that's what got me started, though. It like gave me that connection to like that realm of God is alive, magic is afoot, the universe is this like pulsing benevolent frequency that I can connect to and start to manifest with. And actually The Secret also came out my senior year in high school, and I watched it on Netflix, and I remember manifesting a ton of stuff based upon visualizing and making a vision board. And so that was like, okay, here's my own proof. It's like boom, 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 boom. Made this happen, made that happen, made this happen. And so then I think ever since then I had an affinity for that type of thing. And then it just was like years and years of me like actually coming across teachings, teachers, different methodologies, trying things and seeing what worked for me to actually start to kind of build up my own living library of knowledge within myself about that kind of thing. But that is what started the seeking. And I'd always been very into like self-improvement and evolution and expansion, but I think up to that point it had been more from the physical standpoint, because that's all I realized that there was. And then once you get beyond that frontier, and I kind of almost feel like the spiritual frontier is the final frontier, then it's like, okay, well, I have to include it all now because I know that it exists.
Classic spiritual awakening.
Yeah, really classic. Tale as old as time.
I had a spiritual awakening probably around that similar time as well, and I remember that feeling of like, who else is talking about this? Like, this is really exciting.
It's so exciting. You're like, oh my God, like, just so beautiful and magical. And I remember you actually talking about how a lot of the information you would find would be on Twitter. And I felt the same way. Like, I don't know why, but on Twitter was the only place that at that time people were talking about these kinds of things. A lot of like stoner communities on Twitter, like all these different people, and it's like the stuff that was being talked about were like legit potent spiritual teachings. Yeah. And that was definitely a discovery point for me. I was like, oh, these people get it.
And it was kind of in the drug culture as well, like the weed smokers online, or the trips. Now weed is legalized, and it honestly has been since then. Not everywhere, but there was like the war on drugs, and there wasn't the whole microdosing therapeutically that like everyone and their mom does now. And it was kind of like an ironic entry point in the way that it's because we were like teenagers kind of like rebelling and experimenting.
Totally.
And then kind of found God, and then everyone else is like, same. And people have been talking about this for millions of years, and there's all these like really deep, profound spiritual truths, and then it's kind of like, wow, this is actually a lot deeper than anything I even thought.
Yeah. Or intended to come across 100%. Like, you're like, and I opened Pandora's box.
Yeah. In addition to the origins of your spiritual scholarship and our friendship, there's also the origins of your soul in this incarnation on Earth. And something that Anneka actually introduced me to for real, besides just hearing about it, is the concept of starseed origins. If your soul has multiple incarnations, some of these are in different star systems, different galaxies where you've had other lifetimes, and there are these civilizations of beings out there that are so fascinating to learn about, and you can connect to your star family. So when it comes to starseed origins, Anneka has a couple, as do many of us. And in the ancient future, the Milky Way galaxy and the neighboring Andromeda galaxy merge into a giant Milkdromedan galaxy. And Anneka, one of her starseed origins, is Andromedan, the next galaxy over. And in the combined Milk, Andromeda galaxy in that timeline, Anneka and I determined our starseed mission on this lifetime together. To learn more about that, you can check out the previous episode. I want to know, not necessarily just limited to Milk Andromeda, your reflections on your starseed mission here on Earth. Like I said, she has more than one starseed origin and starseed mission.
I feel like the starseed origins is such an interesting portal of consciousness. Like, I love you talking about galactivated, because it's like all of a sudden you having this smaller pinpoint of you just imagining yourself as a human here on Earth to all of a sudden, like we were just talking about when we were driving through the desert the other night. And she's like, you know, now when I'm driving around a lot of the times, it's not just like, oh, I'm Calista driving in a car as a human. It's like, oh, I'm on Earth. Like, you have this perspective of like, there are galaxies upon galaxies, universes upon universes, and I'm just like here driving on road on Earth. And it's so great. I love it. But I would also say that even if you don't necessarily currently resonate with having starseed origin, it might come to you over time, because even you at first were like, I don't know if I'm a starseed. One of the most extraterrestrial like beings I've ever met, you know what I mean? And then in due time it was like boom, 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 points come together, discovery comes together, and then now it's like full resonance. So I think that can also come to time if you're open to it. Okay, my starseed mission kind of has to do with this podcast, broadcasting the frequency of the new Earth now. I feel that mine, which it can be ever unfolding, and I'm sure there's more I'll discover as time goes on, because as a human we're kind of ignorant purposely to the point where like we only know what we know when we need it. So at this moment in time, as far as like what I know or feel to be true, it is to embody the frequency of the new Earth now, essentially, to really own that and live in that integrated way of what is true to my soul, and then let that affect or activate whoever it is meant to. Because ultimately I think so many of us came here with different purposes. Some of us it's to like carry out a very physical concrete mission, a very physical concrete task. Some of us is just to exist at a certain frequency that's different than what the frequency of the previous stage of evolution the Earth has been in. Like if you are a very galactic soul and you come and you're vibrating that very galactic soul frequency along with many others who have come to vibrate at that soul frequency, you are essentially shifting the frequency of the planet just by being here. So some people can have that just be as their mission. I do think that over time I've come to realize that it's not just to like exist in my way of being that like my soul feels is aligned and just kind of do that in the shadows. I think it is to share more than I would. Like, it'd almost be like so easy to be in a cave and hermit, but I do kind of feel like it's not just to embody and to live in this way that is in alignment with my soul, but also to share that and let it be seen and then not be attached to whatever that necessarily leads to. So I think it's to like continue to become more and more in alignment with living the way that like my soul is asking me to, which I feel like is almost like an embodiment of the frequency of the new Earth, the closer I get to it, and then also share that in whatever way that looks like. And I feel like that can be ever changing, because it doesn't matter like what the specific project is or what the specific 3D activity is that's happening. It's more like, okay, is that in alignment with the more that I learn and the more that I discover, embodying that ever increasing closeness to that alignment, and then also letting that be seen in whatever way is being asked. Because I think that also when you're into like these spiritual pursuits, like the ultimate pursuit can kind of be to grow and evolve your own consciousness and to reach that state of oneness again. And sometimes I think there can be this, I don't know, idea that sharing and like being seen and all these other things is either like not necessary or not a positive thing to want to do. That's like not a good way to explain it, but I just think that there's so many people out there sharing their own frequency with the world, and it's like as many people as we can have sharing that frequency who are on a evolutionary path, who are like here to help bring everything into a greater state of harmony, or at least like try to have this perspective of uplifting themselves and all beings everywhere on this planet and beyond. The more of those people that can be sharing, the more it will like positively impact the frequency on the planet. Like if you have something to share and I think you feel that it could benefit people, it's almost like a sacred responsibility, because it's like, if you think about the media and like all the stuff is being shared that maybe is like not positively impacting people, and then there are all these people who are like doing all this kind of stuff in secret that is like very positive and uplifting for themselves, but they're like, oh well, what's the point of sharing it? Like I don't care about being seen, like that's not an important thing. Like it's almost like it not being about that. It's about like evening out the pie of like what is being shared and what is possibly being exposed to people younger and older. Literally 144 on the clock as I'm talking about this, we're a lot about the 144,000, which are these beings that essentially came to Earth to help uplift the frequency and assist it in its evolution towards a higher state of consciousness, which basically, if we're like trying to break down what is a higher state of consciousness, the lower state of consciousness is like this feeling of separation, that you are separate from not only everybody else, but also from your creator, like divine source consciousness. And then higher states of consciousness are coming closer to that unity frequency where you feel this unity with all other beings, all other life, like literally anything that's alive, it's all this like one vibrating spectrum of source consciousness, and then feeling that unity also with creator consciousness. And so, at least for me, and it might not be for everybody, but I kind of do feel, even though it's like a little bit of a growth edge for me, like I feel like most like I'm fulfilling my divine purpose when I'm A, living in alignment, but like B, like not doing that from a hidden place, like being open to share what I'm doing for like no particular end result. But I just know how much help I've received from witnessing other people live in a way that I then realized I was like, oh, that's how my soul's been wanting to live. Like, that's what my soul has been wanting to do. Like, oh my God, I actually do think that, but I never had words to put to it. So obviously there's so many people who are like way farther along in the journey than me, but there might be somebody who's on a certain part of their journey where they can actually only hear it the way I can say it because of like the distance that we are from each other along this spiral path. And ultimately, like we are all one, but our different fractals are experiencing it at different points along the journey. And I really do feel like it's the idea of like no soul left behind vibe. Like everybody has to be able to make their own choice, but like for everybody to have the opportunity to be exposed to information, vibrations, practices, etc., that like can help them get from like here to here. I think that is definitely part of my soul mission, is just to be like a whatever small fractal in that offering of liberation for all beings ultimately.
Wow, there's a lot of powerful things to be unpacked in what was said. Not only the power of leading by example, which when everyone is all one and is all connected, and a lot of beings are very compassionate and loving, they want the best for each other, and it can be overwhelming to these sensitive souls to feel like they don't know how to help people out of their suffering, and the only way is to live by example. And who amongst us on our healing journey has not had that moment where one of the most impactful moments on our healing journey is something that someone said so randomly that will never, ever, ever know that you had even seen or heard of them in the world. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it's very amazing, and it's very important that people demonize pursuing visibility and influence. And it is something when it comes to the mission, the 144,000, anyone who resonates with like being on this path of wanting to bring in a better future and world, it can be an obstacle and a limit when we're just all too good of a person to want to be rich and famous. So too bad for everyone. They only get the messages of these like egomaniac criminals who don't care if they live or die. So I think it's amazing. I love it. And I definitely see you growing in that mission because it also helps your soul family and your soul tribe to find you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you are becoming more comfortable being visible. And in the past, you had a previous podcast that you had just started. But if you hadn't, I never would have known, like, this is someone who'll start a spiritual podcast. So I think the more you can, like, be seen and more people know what you're about, mm-hmm. it increases your reach of your mission so much because then you can collaborate and so on and, like, share even farther.
100%. Yeah, you never know what something will lead to. And I also think that we're such creative beings that sometimes it's, like, the most fulfilling thing to do just to, like, create something, no matter what it is. I don't know if that is something that absolutely everybody resonates with, because I have met people who are like, maybe their creativity is more in their problem solving or this or that, but definitely opening the channel for that in whatever way can lead to really profound shifts. And yeah, you never know where something's going to lead, something that you do 5 years ago. How many times do you hear that story that, like, that one thing you did 5 years ago that you never thought anybody was going to see, and then that's what leads to that, and then that's what leads to that. It's like kind of showing up to be a channel for it.
I think so. And creating something is the ultimate, like, living as God. And there's a victim consciousness and creator consciousness. And there's, like, a perspective of being kind of, like, at the mercy of God. And then you realize, you know what? This is a brand new moment. I can influence the future. And I feel connected to my creator. And that sense of being an instrument of God's will and having the divine live through you, and then you can just express yourself. It's, like, so amazing.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
This somewhat brings me to another one of your starseed origins. We heard through the network of universal information that Anneka was a mantis being.
Oh my god, I forgot about that one.
For those of you who don't know, mantis beings are very old souls. They are masters throughout their incarnations of emotional detachment, I think in kind of the Buddhist way of understanding that there's a bigger picture than the experience of emotional suffering when it is happening. And in that way as well, just less identified with this current incarnation, the finite human body. And I definitely can see that in you. And I think it's a very rare perspective. So if there was anything you felt called to share about your perspective and your experience as a mantis being.
Thank you. I feel like even our relationship has made me see that that's kind of a separate quality than most people have. I mean, I feel like I've noticed that. But, you know, sometimes when you're trying to give somebody advice and you're, like, somebody with a high level of emotional detachment, but you're giving it to advice of, like, somebody that's, like, not how they operate. And it's like, yeah, that sounds well and good, but, like, that's not how this works over here. And I feel like there is so much beauty on both ends of the spectrum because there's so many lessons to be garnered for both. And we're probably all have the certain operating system we have to, like, execute whatever we're here to execute and make happen. But yeah, no, growing up, when somebody would be, like, really upset about something, I feel like when I was younger, I just didn't even know how to handle people's intense emotions. I was like that kind of friend who would pat you on the back and be like, there, you know? Not to say that I never, like, as a child, like, I definitely had, you know, like, angry emotional outbursts. It's actually funny to think about because, like, as a kid, like, my parents said I was crazy, so, like,
cleared it out.
Yeah, maybe, like, cleared out at a young age. I think also just, like, so much of having been on the spiritual path that, like, once I started to learn about what emotions really are and the experience of them, like, ever passing, and, like, they don't mean as much to me. They almost, like, don't mean anything. Like, emotions aren't really worthwhile information because I don't necessarily want to try to shift my situation or, like, blame something in my situation for me having a certain emotional experience. Like, I notice that now I, like, treat emotions when they come up as nothing to attach to. Like, me being angry in the situation doesn't mean I'm this. It doesn't mean the other person is this. It doesn't mean, like, everything's wrong and I have to go fix everything so that, like, I don't have to feel this feeling. It's literally just, oh, like, this feeling is here. If I am, like, having a bunch of intense emotions, like, I'll put myself in a place where I can just process and let that chill out, because like I'm probably overstimulated, all this other stuff is going on, but like I'm not so attached to like, why am I feeling this? What is going on? Because I think throughout my life, I just noticed that that was kind of an endless vortex rather than just like viewing it from this totally attached perspective. It's just like this ever passing experience. And then it takes up so much less of my time because it's just like, okay, and then we're done. Obviously, if there's an experience that's happening over and over and over again and it's becoming this cycle because it's not being tended to, that's a different story. But like I've noticed that most of the time it's because I am not even being super conscious or not giving myself what I need, or if I have a certain emotion about somebody else or that arose because of an interaction with somebody else, I just like have this bigger picture perspective of it that I know it's not the person's fault. I see what pattern it's probably from, and I just don't give it that much weight because it's just not what I am here to focus on in my human experience. I almost find that when I focus on that too much, like that becomes the front color of the human experience, versus if I just focus on like what I need to do and where I'm going, all of that stuff just resolves, and it's just the same as a passing thought. Like if you went through your day and were worried about every like weird thought that you had, you would be like in this loop chasing around your thoughts all day, versus knowing that there's so much flying around in the collective field, and also like our brains are like these crazy supercomputers that like you get stimulated by this, you're gonna have this thought over here, but stuff is bubbling up from your subconscious left and right. So it's like staying on mission and staying focused on what I'm focused on versus getting caught up in the land of thoughts or emotions, because they're ever changing, they're somewhat unpredictable. On some level, they do need to be tended to, because like we talk about a lot, like your thoughts have a huge creative power over your reality, and I guess so does your emotional world. I just want to stimulate as many positive thoughts in alignment with where I'm going as I can, and as many empowering emotions as I can in alignment with where I'm going as I can, and like everything else that occurs I'm just like not really paying attention to. I think like of course just like anyone else, I'll feel intense emotions about something. If it's not practically gonna help me, I don't like fall into too deep of a hole around it.
That's exactly the type of thing I was hoping you would say, and I think it's such a good example. And it's true that everyone is so unique, and for many humans that I observe, navigating the emotional experience is a main part of the curriculum. That said, some souls come to Earth to be a blueprint for what it looks like to hold a frequency of being beyond that. And I do think it is the direction of our evolution into the fifth dimension to have less charge identifying towards these emotional experiences that we have. There's infinite information and stimuli in our environment, and our brain works as like an algorithm for efficiency based on what it has learned in the past. That's why it's great to program yourself with like these routines and patterns as much as you can, so you don't even have to waste energy thinking about things you don't need to think about. But you also need to stay sharp and be aware of when has the circumstance changed where actually this isn't the best way to sort and simplify like your sensory information for your objective. A lot of the stuff going through our life, red car, blue car, yellow car, like none of that is like alarm bells in our mind, like, oh my god, there's a yellow car on the road today. If we were like, oh, and now crazy axe murderer running down the street, you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna go a whole different route to work. I think that being ruled by your thoughts, being ruled by your emotions, being ruled by, if you see a red car, a yellow car, like depending on your perspective, it's like this thought, this emotion, this experience, this observation. Some people are at more of a point in their Earth curriculum where this thought, whatever, washing dishes, doing that, this person texts me, when it's like, oh, I feel anger, sadness, heartbreak, that is like an alarm bell. Mm-hmm. What is going on? I have anger emotion. And it doesn't have to be like that. If you're like too scared to even process and feel and express your anger, you're not at this part of the curriculum. But some people are, so I think it is amazing to have that example. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
Of course. I mean, it just makes me think, because like there were times in my life where I did feel like that. So I think it is just the constant practice, the clearing. Eventually you do come to a point where the growth in the work like really does pay off. You know what I mean? So no matter where you're at, you keep going. It's just like it's going to get clearer and better, etc. So I guess that's the whole point of being in a curriculum.
Very inspiring note to end on.
Yeah.
So stick with it, everyone. But I think we should do a regular segment because I quite enjoyed my interviewing you. I think every once in a while it's good for you guys to get to know a little more about us. I know Anneka still had some questions she didn't get to. I have a bunch. So we will see you in a future installment of interviewing these Divine Rising New Earth hosts.
Just to milk drum it in.
TV producers coming to play a starring role as their selves in a reality show on Earth where we self-produce a podcast called Divine Rising New Earth.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Divine Rising New Earth is a show we created within a show that we're already in for beings in our home galaxy.
That we also created as multidimensional media producers up there. So it's kind of like, of course we would be playing ourselves. So it's hilarious.
Yeah. It's a multi-layered, creative, humorous production.
In Milk Dramata are our incarnations there. Stars of a reality show about their lives? I don't think so, but it's possible.
Yeah.
It goes so deep. All layers of the universe. We're self-produced stars of our own show. So thank you for tuning in.
For real. Thank you so much. We love you, Divine Risers. Stay safe out there. Stay well. We are so looking forward to seeing you next week, maybe the week after. We'll see. And until then, flourish.